Cool. Okay, so for this next little bit, we'll go through how to make a reservation in EMS. So we'll talk about two different ways to make a reservation in the system. We'll start off with making a recurring reservation or long-term reservation, and then we'll follow that up with making a one-off or kind of a quick reservation in the system. So to make a recurring reservation, the first place that we're going to start is in the reservation wizard. So click the button with the magic wand here, and it will pull up our reservation wizard screen. So from here, the first thing that I need to do is select my dates. If it's a short-term recurrence, I can certainly click whatever dates I want, whatever random date pattern I want in the calendar area. Just a single click, no need to hold Control or Shift. If, on the other hand, it's a more standard date pattern, I can certainly use the button at the left to select all my weekdays with a single click, or every day that week with a double click, or click on, say, the F to highlight all my Fridays in the current month. Alternately, I can always go to the date pattern button to set a much more long-term date pattern. So, for instance, from the 14th of September 2011 to the 14th of September 2012, I wanted to say the first Wednesday of every month. And very, very easy to put those patterns in, hit OK. The system will go through and save those 12 dates. In this case, I've accidentally selected a holiday, so I can always hit OK. Go to my Selected Dates tab and review all of the dates that I've selected. If I would just want to remove that holiday from my date pattern entirely, I could certainly highlight it, hit Remove, and pull that one date completely out of the pattern, leaving the rest of the pattern intact. On the other hand, had I wanted to, I could have certainly picked up that date from my Selected Dates tab, hit Go to Date, and just alter it by unclicking on the 4th and, say, clicking onto the 5th instead to move that date one day over. Once I've got my dates selected, the next thing I have to enter is my start time and end time. So again, what time will the event actually start, and what time will the event actually end? Once I've done that, I have to choose my time zone to ensure that I know what time it'll be 9 a.m. at. So again, that should default based on the building that you've selected. However, if you know that you'll be booking a multi-site audio or video conference, you want to decide where it'll be 9 a.m., what time zone that time is relative to. From there, if you need any setup or teardown time, you can always uncheck Use Default and enter however many hours of setup or teardown time you need for that event. If you don't need any, you can always leave Use Default checked. From there, you can always select the building that you'd like to search for space in. If you need to select for multiple buildings, you can always use a location to search for multiple buildings at a specific site, or just select the buildings to all and search multiple buildings at once. We can also search based on the type of rooms. So if I only want to return auditoriums, I can certainly select that, computer labs, conference rooms, any of the configured room types in the system. Alternately, I can make sure that all of the rooms that I return will hold the given number of attendees. So for instance, I could pick the default setup type and say 40 for my setup count, and the only rooms that I'll get returned are rooms that would hold at least 40 people. And very easy to select those. Once I've selected all of my filter options, I can then go to my status and choose what status I want to book my event into. Typically, again, we would really only be working with confirmed, hold, or wait list if your site uses a wait list. From there, we can hit Next. System will warn me that I'm booking more than 6 months into the future. Again, I meant to type in 2012 in my date pattern, so that's totally fine. Hit Yes. And the system will show me all of the rooms in the building that I selected that are available. In this case, all 12 of the dates that I selected from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. So I know that every single room in this list I can have for all 12 of those dates. If the room that I really wanted isn't appearing in this list, I can always go to the Conflict tab. And if I find the room in this Conflict tab, I can click on it and see a list below of all of the bookings I would be conflicting with. So if I know that I want to go in and bump out this event, now I know what date I can't have that room that I'll have to go and make that change for. Alternately, from the Available tab, I can just double-click any room that I want to move it over to the right, or I can multi-select rooms and click the single right arrow to move them over to the right. If I need to reset my selections, just hit the double left arrow to move everything back over. Once I've selected the room that I want, I can hit Next. and go through and put in the rest of the details for my event. So again, we want to give the event a title or a name. Again, we want to be as descriptive as possible for what kind of an event it is or what they're doing in that space. Next, we want to put in our event type. So again, what kind of an event is it? What are they doing in that space? So we've got multiple different options for different kinds of meetings. I would also point out our confidential option would make sure that none of the details for this event will appear on the virtual side. So we've done that. We need to select the sponsor or host for our event. So I can click on the magnifying glass and bring up my sponsor host search screen. So from here, all I need to do is type in the person's last name, hit go, and the system will give me a list of every current user who has that last name. I can go ahead and click on their name and hit select, and they'll be chosen for my sponsor host. From here, if I need to, I can add an additional contact. So in this case, if I didn't want to call Jane, I wanted to call someone else, if I had any changes to the meeting, I would hopefully be able to find them in this first contact dropdown. If, as in this case, nobody exists, I would have two choices. I could either select temporary contact and manually type in the person's information, or if I knew that in this case Jesse was going to be booking on Jane's behalf pretty frequently, I'd always hit the plus person button and add that person into the system. Once I've put in their name, their phone number, and their email address, and hit OK, that person from now on will always appear in the drop-down list for that particular sponsor host so that I can select them in the future. I can also always add a secondary contact if I need a second point of contact for that particular meeting, but I never have to use first or second contact if I don't have one. Once I've added the sponsor host and their contacts, I need to tell the system how the room should be set up. Again, if they have a specific setup need, I can certainly select it. If they don't, I can always just pick default. I do need to list a setup count, so how many people will they be expecting at their meeting. Again, keeping in mind that the setup count at this point has no effect whatsoever on the room. If I wanted to book a capacity of 6 room for 50 people, the system won't say anything. If I wanted to make sure that I was only finding rooms to fit the number of people that I had, I would have wanted to use the filter on that very first screen. From here, we can go to our billing tab, include the Amex name if I have one, or the cost center number if I have it. Again, this will just make it easier later to have a little less editing to do if the group decides to order catering. From there, we've got our virtual tab. So as with the sponsor host, I want to assign this to the person's web user account. So again, we hit the magnifying glass, do the same search for the person's last name, select them from the list, and the system will then assign this to their web user account to allow that person to make any edits, additions, or changes to this event from the virtual side in the future. Once I'm done, I could just hit finish, and the event will now be saved in the system. So again, very easy. Alternately, from that same reservation wizard view, we have a couple of other options. If I have a long-term recurrence, so in this case 10 separate days, and I'm having a difficult time finding a single room that they can use for every one of those dates, say from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m., rather than using the standard search, I might instead use the best fit search. When I select that, rather than showing me all of the rooms that are available for all 10 of my dates, the system will show me every room that's available for at least one of my dates. So we'll see our days available column. As I scroll down, I'll see some rooms that may only be available for 3, 5, 6, 7, whatever days of those 10. If I select one of those rooms, it'll fill in this case, the 5 dates it was available for, and allow me to select a different room to fill in my remaining 5 dates. So I can keep selecting rooms until I have a room for every date. The other big downside to our best fit method is that you can only select one room per date, but it can be a really effective way to get a meeting into the system so that you can then manipulate or to move things around on the calendar later as needed. Cool. So it's basically booking a recurring event. If I want to book a one-off event or a one-time only event, I can do that through the reservation book. So I click on the book and bring it up. And we'll see our standard graphical view of the system. So at this point, if somebody called and said, I need a room later today from, say, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., I can really easily scroll through the book to find a room that will work for their event. Just click into the white space right next to 2 and drag out to 3. When I release, it'll take me right into the reservation wizard, but this time it'll have date, time, and location already filled in. The only thing I have to worry about here is the status that I want to give the event, and then hitting next, all of the details for that specific event. So again, name, type, host, setup type, and count. So again, very, very easy way to add a quick one-off meeting into the system.